When you have a belief that does not comport with reality, you have two options. You can either change that belief to comport with reality. That's what we call sanity. Or you can refuse to change your belief. That's called insanity. Now, I'm not saying anybody that I'm going to talk about today is sane or insane. I'm just saying that it doesn't do anybody any good to espouse beliefs on how the world works that don't comport with reality. You may have remembered from the video I did last night on the auditor in, it was Ohio. He went into a federal courthouse and he was met with U.S. Marshals. The U.S. Marshals were providing the protection for that federal courthouse. You may notice that when James went into the Earl Cabell Federal Building, he was met with DHS officers, but then he went to the 5th floor that housed the federal courthouse. He was met with U.S. Marshals. Now, we're going to talk to Mr. Pushkart. Mr. Pushkart has come back for round 2. A well-deserved round 2. Thank you, Mr. Pushkart. I do appreciate your comments. He says Murby's rather snarky. Indeed, I was rather snarky. Thank you for picking up on that. I do not refuse to be snarky when people give bad information or misinformation, or when they try to educate me on things that I've already made videos on. So enjoy. You're going to get some more snark today. I really do hope you enjoy it. So he says the Federal Marshals page reads they protect judicial officials, people. I'm going to assume he meant this as a standalone sentence or whatever, because it goes on. Indeed, FPS is responsible for the protection of federal facilities, including court buildings. So he's sort of right. The Federal Marshals page does read they protect judicial officials. It also reads that they protect courthouses. And yes, the FPS is responsible for the protection of certain, not all, but certain federal facilities, including some court buildings, but not all. So there's that. This is the page that I referenced. Protection of federal judicial officials, which includes judges, attorneys, and jurors, holds a high priority with U.S. Marshals Service. You can read this as that their high priority is to protect these people, like Secret Service officers, where they follow them home and, you know, they chauffeur them around. You got a juror with somebody with a little earpiece behind them, dark glasses while they're going through Whole Foods or whatever. I mean, you could think it's that way, or you could comport your belief to reality and realize that, you know, all these times where auditors have gone in and tried to film federal court buildings and they've been met with U.S. Marshals. I mean, even Warden, News Now Houston, he did one a long time ago where he was filming on the street, on the sidewalk, and he had CSOs come out and give him grief, and they pushed him into the side or into the road. And then he demanded that they bring out the U.S. Marshal, and a U.S. Marshal came out. Are you going to contend that those were all FPS officers and PSOs? You have to comport your belief to reality. I'm sorry. Deputy marshals use the latest security techniques and devices at highly sensitive trials. Where are trials held? Courthouses? Again, the second sentence, you match that up with the first sentence. Okay, so all these court people, judges, attorneys, and jurors, those you can find all those in a courthouse. You could find the latest security techniques and devices to protect trials in a courthouse. Fully trained contract officers comprise the agency's Court Security Officer CSO program. Okay, so the agency has a CSO program. What do? These specially deputized officers have full law enforcement authority and occupy a vital role in courthouse security. I don't know how to read that other than saying that the U.S. Marshals have an obligation to provide courthouse security for federal courts, and they use CSOs in that. The Marshal Service protects more than 2,000 sitting judges and countless other court officials at more than 400 court facilities throughout the nation. How can you read this without getting a glimmer of the idea that U.S. Marshals are responsible for courthouse security? Now, the Earl Cabell Federal Building and Courthouse is a federal building and courthouse. It's not a federal courthouse. It's a federal building and courthouse. There is a federal courthouse located within the Earl Cabell Federal Building. So not the whole federal building is a courthouse. Only the floors that are occupied by the Fifth Circuit Federal Court. That's why there will be FPS officers providing security for the federal building as a whole. And then when Mr. Freeman gets off the elevator at the 5th floor, that is a courthouse, he's met with CSOs. And there are also federal U.S. Marshals there. You have to comport it with reality. All right. However, the Marshals also manage court security officers that you could argue are responsible for protecting personnel and facilities. The Court Security Officer Program is managed by the Judicial Security Division within the United States Marshal Service. The Office of Court Security, OCS, is responsible for managing and developing an effective nationwide physical security program for federal judiciary court facilities. OCS oversees security services performed by more than 5,000 contract court security officers, filling over 4,200 authorized full-time and shared positions within all United States circuits and districts. CSOs safeguard approximately 440 court facilities throughout the nation. The OCS is comprised of 4 branches: Applications and Qualification Branch, JSI Field Support Branch, Training and Compliance Branch, and Management Support Branch. Each branch performs an integral part of the program's operations, ensuring that the individuals performing as CSOs are suitable to fit and protect the nation's courts. One of the major responsibilities of the United States Marshal Service is to ensure the safety of all federal courts and court employees against unauthorized, illegal, and potentially life-threatening activities. To accomplish the provision of courthouse security, the USMS contracts with private security contractors. The employees of the contractors, known as CSOs, are deputized as Special Deputy U.S. Marshals with firearms and arrest powers while on duty at their given work sites. Are we really going to pick the fly shit out of the pepper on this? I mean, they are Special Deputy U.S. Marshals. So the Marshals, and it's operated under the U.S. Marshals agency. I don't know, like, okay. But he says, however, clearly FPS's primary responsibility is facility protection. Yes, of the facilities that they are contracted to protect, their primary responsibility is facility protection. Remember, the FPS is a branch of the DHS. The GSA owns a lot of federal buildings, and they operate those federal buildings for the tenant federal agencies. And the GSA employs the FPS to protect some, not all, of those federal facilities. So again, there are videos out there which you could watch that will challenge your idea of how it works. My idea of how it works comports with reality. Your idea of how it works, I guess you're arguing for internet points. The U.S. Marshal Service provides courthouse security for federal courts. They may do so in conjunction with the FPS. The FPS works with a lot of law enforcement branches. They have a fusion center where their whole goal is to enable them to work more closely with other law enforcement agencies. So the U.S. Marshals may share the responsibility in places like the Earl Cabell Federal Building and Courthouse. They may share the responsibilities with the FPS, but in the courthouse, they have jurisdiction. It is their responsibility to provide security for the courthouse. You ding the updated 2010 memo. Yeah, you published a video on the memo on May 8th, 2018. I dinged you because you linked me to an older version of the bulletin after. So I made my video on May 8th. You made this video, or I'm sorry, you made this comment 6 days ago. That'd be somewhere around the 24th? Wait, math. I'm a lawyer, not a mathematician. 26th? 26th, roughly the 26th. Yes, roughly. Sure. So somewhere around the 26th, you made this comment. So I made a video on the 2018 memo on May 8th. You posted a link to the 2010 video on roughly May 26th. Did you think I was unaware of the 2010 memo? In fact, I have made multiple videos on the 2010 memo. You're linking me to information I am aware of. Even the 2018 memo I'm aware of. It does not apply. For many reasons, it does not apply. The FPS officer in this video acted in complete compliance with the policy memo of the FPS. He acted in complete compliance with it. The issue that was addressed in this was not the actions of the FPS officer. It was the belief of Mr. Freeman that somehow the FPS officer could make the marshals allow Mr. Freeman to film in the federal courthouse. And no, the memo has no bearing on the U.S. Marshals because it is a policy memo for the FPS. So again, you're retarded. Excuse me, you're uninformed and misinformed. I meant to say you're uninformed and misinformed. You're not probably, medically retarded. You're just uninformed and misinformed. So it says, yes, districts may establish local rules per Rule 83 rules by district court. Yeah, they can. Here's Rule 83 rules by district court, judge directives. Yes, I mentioned that in a video last night. The history of cameras in court presentation is pretty clear that it speaks to courtrooms. Oh, it is it? Well, lucky for you, I have it right here. Let's see. Courtroom and areas immediately adjacent thereto. And in adjacent areas or adjacent areas. And in adjacent areas or adjacent areas. Or adjacent areas. Do you get it? Do you see where you're screwing up here? Are we trying for internet points or are we actually reading these things? Because I read them. You're wrong. However, in addition to Rule 53, the Northern District of Texas has a local rule. I think it means in addition to Rule 83, but that's fine. Civil Rule 83.13, photographs, broadcasting, recording, and television forbidden. The rules and orders, and that is this. It says no person may photograph, electronically record, televise, or broadcast a judicial proceeding. It shall not apply to ceremonial proceedings or electronic recordings by an official court reporter or other authorized court personnel. Now, judicial proceeding can probably be broadly determined. Again, it typically refers to adjacent areas as well. Who is going to be determining the scope of 83.13? It's going to be a judge. A judge will determine the scope. And I'll bet you dollars to donuts that since judges talk to the U.S. Marshals and they tell them the court rules and they walk by those signs every day that say no recording devices, etc. I'm going to guess the judges are okay with it. And if you do push it and one of those judges has to make a determination on what the scope of judicial proceeding is, they're going to hold it's the courthouse. I'll bet you $1. Again, your beliefs should comport with reality. If they don't, you're doing it wrong and you may need to reconsider it. He says this rule reiterates rule. I think he still means 83, but is not additive to rule 83. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. Because rule 83 just said that they can make rules. They can make local rules, and that's phenomenal. A local rule, blah, blah, blah. Copies of the rules amendments must be furnished to judicial council and the administrative office and be made available to the public. A rule imposing a requirement of form must not be enforced, blah, blah, blah. Procedure when there's no controlling law. A judge may regulate practice in any manner consistent with federal law. Rules adopted under 28 U.S.C. blah, 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 and the district's local rules. No sanction or other disadvantage may be imposed for noncompliance with any requirement not in federal law. Federal rules or the local rules, unless the alleged violator has been furnished with, in the particular case, with actual notice of the requirement. Them saying you can't film in the courtroom, that you can't film in the courthouse, that is supplying you with actual notice. And local rules are different than court orders. Court orders, you don't need actual notice. I think you just need constructive notice. Anyway, I'd have to look into that. I could be wrong on that. If I am, sue me. All right, he says many facilities. I'm wondering if he is a sovereign citizen because like the strange caps, but maybe not. I don't know. I don't want to judge him too harshly. Where court is held, such as the Earl Davis Federal Building, has tenants from various agencies outside the scope of Rule 53. I'm starting to wonder if he does mean Rule 83 or if he actually means Rule 53. So in addition to Rule 53, the Northern District, I don't know what he's going with there. I wonder if there is a rule. Let's look up Rule 53 just so I know I'm not being crazy. Yeah. Masters and Masters Authority. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he means Rule 53. I wonder if he means Rule 53 in here. Briefing practice for objections and motions concerning orders, reports, and recommendation of masters. No. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm going to continue to read this as it is, as though he is referring to Rule 83. Obviously, he has no problems in making comments. So if I am misreading this, please feel free to post. I'll be happy to tear down whatever. I mean, to respond to you again. This includes lobbies, corridors, common areas, and the like where public access is not restricted but must be in conformity with 41 CFR 102-74. So yes and no. So if the lobbies, corridors, common areas, and the like are in the tenant agency's leased area, then the GSA's rules don't apply in those areas. The tenant agency's rules will apply. If you have an apartment, or let's say, because you're going to say, oh, it's a private area. All right. So let's say you want to start a business. And so you go to the local shopping mall. I think those still exist. And you go to local shopping mall and you lease a space in the shopping mall for your store to run your business. The shopping mall is going to have various rules of conduct. They will trespass you from the shopping mall if you violate whatever their rules are. Like if they have rules against running, then they can trespass you. The security guards hired by the shopping mall can trespass you from the shopping mall if you violate the shopping mall's rules. But if you have a store, you've leased that space, subject to any provisions in the lease, you can do basically whatever you want in that store. Let's say that the shopping mall has rules against people running in the shopping mall. In your store, you can make a little track and you could have people running in your store. Let's say the shopping mall has rules on dress code. You know, you can't wear a swimsuit in the shopping mall. But in the store you've leased, maybe you install a swimming pool and you allow people to wear bikinis. It is your space. You have the lease on it. You are effectively, for all intents and purposes, you're the owner until that lease expires. And again, subject to the provisions in the lease. The same thing happens with the courthouse. A tenant agency leases that space from the GSA. The GSA's rules, subject to whatever's in the lease and subject to whatever's in the law, doesn't apply within those tenant spaces. So he says this includes lobbies, corridors, common areas, and the like where public access is not restricted. So if those lobbies, corridors, and common areas are within the tenant spaces, then the tenant's rules apply. If the lobbies, corridors, and common areas are between tenant spaces, like if there's a tenant on one side and a tenant on the other side and a corridor between them, that would be GSA, because those tenants, neither tenant has leased that space. But if a tenant leases a whole floor, then all the common areas in that floor actually are leased by the tenant agency. There aren't really common areas. All the lobbies, corridors, and etc. they belong to that tenant agency because that tenant agency has leased them. Must be in conformity with 41 CFR 102-74, addressing the entire section on conduct. Sorta. There are provisions in here that I'm sure are worked into the leases about having to post. Federal agencies made their they have to post signs. Federal agencies must post the notice in the appendix to Part 102-74 at each public entrance to each federal facility. So there are some rules that probably apply through the leases. But let's see, because again, we're looking at James entering a courthouse. Let's see what applies from 102-74.420, because that was the issue. The issue was, can he film there? So, except where security regulations, rules, orders, or directives apply. And I'm assuming that this is referring to GSA rules, regulations, orders, and directives. But it might refer to the tenant agencies. We don't know. Or a federal court order or rule prohibits it. There is a federal rule prohibiting it. So you're just done right there. You're done right there. But we can continue because the tenant agency for James leased the entire 5th floor. So space occupied by the tenant agency, that would be the entire 5th floor. You can't film that without permission of the occupying agency. And if you're filming it for commercial purposes, you have to get written permission of an authorized official of the occupying agency concerned. Now, people are gravitating to building entrances, lobbies, foyers, corridors, or auditoriums for news purposes. But again, we have the federal court order or rule prohibiting it. So it's out just from the get-go. From the get-go, it's out. But see, so again, you have to comport your belief to reality. C applies to the general. The specific are taken care of by A and B. Space occupied by a tenant agency, that's specific. Space occupied by a tenant agency, that's specific. Building entrances, lobbies, foyers, corridors, or auditoriums is general. Specific outweighs general. So if there is a lobby that is space occupied by a tenant agency, the tenant agency would come first. That's the way it's enforced. That's the way the law would be read. Comport your belief to reality. You'll get everything will start making sense once you start comporting your belief system to reality. You don't have to wonder why things aren't going the way you think they should. And always account that there are stupid people in the world, so human error may explain why things aren't going the way it should, but other than that, you should have a pretty good idea. That said, a DC judge, typically the chief judge of the district, may set a local rule regarding conduct within the facility. Yes, it would be the chief judge, such as the use of cell phones. However, any district judge may issue an order superseding the standing local rule when the judge has reason to do so. So a district judge can make any rule they want to within their courtroom. The chief judge would make the rules for the courthouse. And I don't know that a district judge would enter an order superseding the standing local rule without some real specificity. All right, so he says Turner v. Driver covers U.S. Marshals and the performance of their duties when in public. And no, it's within areas of the public where you otherwise would have a right to film. So I do mean traditional public forums. And it's not an equivocation of the public concept. The courts have held that you don't have a right to film in courthouses and courtrooms. Because you don't have a right to film in those otherwise public areas, you don't have a right to film the police. Because you don't have a right to film, period. So the only other, what I mean by in public is where you have a right to film. Turner v. Driver applies. You can film the police in the performance of their duties in public where you have a right to film. So in any public forum, any traditional public forum, and I mean that with specificity, you have an unabridged, unequivocal right to film the police. If you were on a public sidewalk next to a public street, you have an unequivocal, unabridged right to film the police. They may make you take a step back, or they can maintain a small security zone around them, but they can't stop you from filming. They may move you to a safer spot, but they can't stop you from filming legally. According to every circuit court that's ruled on it, they can't do it. So Turner v. Driver applies. Like if you look where Turner v. Driver, if you look where he was filming from a public sidewalk next to a public street. It would be an entirely different matter if he was attempting to film the U.S. Marshals in a courthouse, because he doesn't have the right to film in a courthouse, let alone film the U.S. Marshals. If he had the right to film in the courthouse, then he could film the U.S. Marshals to his heart's content. He does not, however, have the right to film in the courthouse. I agree that the prohibition of photography recording in courtrooms and the access immediately thereto is longstanding. This point is not in dispute. The controversy only regards the DHS memo and the relevance of this and how it affects the public. We've gone over that. I don't know why you're still trying to beat 420 into meaning what you think it means. It doesn't. I do believe that you mischaracterize, but we can look to the DHS memo as it goes into detail on how Leos should interpret the regulations and subsequent actions. It's not how Leos should, it's how FPS agents should. You are equivocating. It's not for Leos, it's for FPS agents. But the plain rule says that if a federal court order or rule prohibits it, you can't film. Done. You don't have to go into the tenant agencies. It's done. I apologize for typos, but assuming Marshal's office is not in a restricted area, it is, that the public has publicly accessible access to. They do. Then DHS memo, I look using the full word of it. Oh, this makes it magical and powerful. No, it doesn't. You're wrong. That said, when Freeman enters the Marshal's space, Freeman is obligated to obtain the Marshal's permission to record, except there is a court rule prohibiting it. Why is this hard to understand? Freeman does not obtain permission and is ordered out. Yes. So he failed on, there is a court rule prohibiting it, and he failed to get permission. But even if he got permission, it wouldn't work because there is a federal rule prohibiting it. So he could be like, hey, Marshals, can I film in here? No, or if they say yes, you can, then no, the court still said you can't. You could get an exception from a judge in the judge's courtroom, but that's it. Because the judge can basically do whatever the judge wants in their courtroom, subject to appeal. I guess technically if he got permission from the chief judge, he could film, or if there was a ceremony or something going on that they could film, then maybe, but yeah. Ultimately, Freeman requests the FPS officer escort him to the Marshal's office. The officer could have informed Freeman that the Marshal's office is off limits to recording if the Marshals do not give permission to do so. But that would be a misstatement. The officer clearly stated in here where he's explaining to James that they don't allow, the court doesn't allow filming on courthouse floors. Done. It's done. That's why it was stupid, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the U.S. Marshals say, no, it's okay, you can film, because it's still what the court has done. The court has made the ruling. Clearly, Freeman over-dramatizes his interaction with the Marshals. Yes, he does. He's also ignorant of the fact that the tenant of a federal facility may deny recording within the space occupied by the tenant. Yes, he is. The FPS officer appears to be familiar with the memo. He could have been more assertive and clarified the rules, but did not. He was very restrained. I mean, I give that FPS officer props. I love the Andy Griffith approach to policing. I think you get a lot more with a carrot than a stick, but some people like Mr. Freeman need sticks. Because Mr. Freeman's not going to learn from the nice FPS officer trying to nicely explain it. I do not believe that I was trying to accuse you of being dishonest in your presentation or nor critical of your presentation. This is saying that I'm wrong. This is wrong. Maxims aren't law. And he wasn't in a safe harbor. So yeah. I simply proffered some points that were not considered in your presentation, several of which you equivocated away or confirm. I don't think well, some of them I did confirm, I think. And that's fine. Where you're right, you're right. But where you're wrong, you're wrong. So there you go. Anyway, thanks for watching. And Mr. Pushkart, if I was wrong in what you're talking about, Rule 53, please clarify with me so I can get on the same page. I may not make a video. I may just respond in text. But yeah, I do appreciate interactions, especially if you're like, I know I'm kind of hard on Mr. Pushkart, and like I told you, I'm snarky. I think he's coming from a good place, but I don't think he understands it as well as he thinks he does. So he could either learn from it and conform his beliefs to reality, or he can choose to ignore and continue to be misled and misleading. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.